What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Week 4 Football Goons Fantasy Football Preview Show. We finally had a week of really exciting games after what felt like an extended preseason, to be quite honest with you. Crazy finishes, big performances from some studs finally, and a few unexpected surprises lead the way this week, and we're going to break it all down for you. Listen, we were having some hijinks before the show started here.
Yeah, I'm already off the rails.
We already lost it. It hasn't even started.
You probably noticed that Rocco isn't here right now. He's having some technical difficulties.
He's listening to classical music.
Yes, Gail, aka Rocco, Gail, is listening to some classical music right now. So he'll be joining us shortly, we hope, if he gets himself back on track. But listen, first, let's address the elephant in the room here. Where do you stand on fantasy football team names? Are you somebody who is a traditionalist and you like to have a long-running franchise, a franchise name that has some significant meaning? Or are you one of these flash-in-the-pan owners who likes to change your name to basically whatever genitalia joke is the flavor of the week with a player's name?
Yeah, that's definitely not my style. That's not a surprise to anyone here in the group with the genitalia names especially. But I like to have kind of a franchise identity for myself, especially in those repeated leagues. I'm not as bad. I've got a guy, my longest running league is 18 years. 7 of us have been in there all 18 years, and one guy has been the Fanatics 18 times. I mean, it's awesome. It's just who he is. And it's neat, if you're going to join public leagues, and do whatever you do, but in those repeated leagues with your buddies, I like being able to refer to him as Fanatics. You know what I mean? Like, we know who he is. I've only had 3 names in that 18-year span. So I like the traditionalists, especially in repeat leagues that you're back all the time, those dynasty kind of situations. But definitely don't change your name every week based on a player that had a good week for you, Tim.
We weren't supposed to name the elephant.
I actually keep my same name for the most part. I have in my league with you guys since the beginning, and actually that was my name in every league before that. And then for my more appropriate name, it has been Luck Dynasty for quite some time now, ever since Luck's been my keeper in that league. So it's going to keep being Luck Dynasty. If he ever plays football again, that's hoping he plays football.
Yeah, I'm definitely a traditionalist. I like to try and keep the same name. I do have, these guys will attest to it. Like, I have my pouting sprees where I hate fantasy football. And,
and that becomes your team name. I hate fantasy.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a time when my team name was I hate fantasy. But for the most part, I go with the hometown name 40 Fort Jobbers. That's been my franchise for a long running time. Lots of leagues. I enjoy it. It gives you some identity out there in the fantasy world. And I think that's kind of a lost art, is to kind of have an identity out there. It's kind of like your gamer tag, so to speak, as far as fantasy football goes. So, that's that for the fantasy team names, because Gail's not here. He'd probably be the only one that I got to stop doing that. He's probably the only one that might disagree with us, because he does like some of those wackier names. So,
I will say, though, I did think what somebody in our league was doing was funny. That changing it to somebody that actually helped him win a game that week, I thought it was funny. So I'll stick up for him there, because he got on my back for not sticking up for him in Messenger.
All right, well, let's get into some of the players that we're looking at on the waiver wire this week. As always, a couple of injuries coming out of last week, a couple of lingering injuries, suspensions. You may be looking for a replacement player to plug in and play if you're in a pinch this week. You might just be looking for a player to kind of spice up your team's performance at this point. We're at the 3-week mark. You kind of have a little better idea of what you have. I mean, I still don't think I'm in panic mode yet, but you may be looking for somebody that could provide a spark for you. So here are some of the top added names across multiple fantasy outlets so far this week, and we're going to give you some comments on them. Number 1, Sterling Shepard, wide receiver of the New York Giants, seems to be kind of taking some of that production that Brandon Marshall should have had, or at least that we all figured he was going to have. He has 8+ targets in 2 of the games that he's played so far. He's been explosive over the middle. He took a long touchdown against the Eagles last week. Are you interested in Sterling Shepard at this point?
Yeah, I think especially in a PPR I am, just because those targets are there. And I think with him, they just played Philly, who's really beat up, and all 3 receivers were startable here in fantasy this last week. But I think even going forward, you see the effect that Odell Beckham has on the Giants in general. I mean, he missed week 1. He came back week 2, but was limited for sure. They were on a snap count. Then he comes back week 3, and he's full strength against the Eagles. And you see, he scored. He got his 2 touchdowns in. He played really well. But on top of that, Shepard busts one, gets over 100 yards. Brandon Marshall all of a sudden has a little space to work. Eli threw for 300 yards. I mean, the Giants as a whole, really, I think probably as much as any other team in the league, are a one-man team, and it's not the quarterback. I mean, there's a lot of teams that you take the quarterback and they're dead. You take Odell, the Giants might not score 100 points in a season. He comes back, all of a sudden, they're a really dangerous team. So that kind of thing, obviously it's great for him and it's great for Eli, but it does extend to those guys like Shepard, who are now flex-worthy, because he's going to not only get targets, but the field's going to be opened up, because if you don't pay attention to Odell, you're dead.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is that he's got a lot opened up to him underneath. And you saw they kind of made a change in philosophy this past week. I read somewhere today that 34 of Eli Manning's passes were out in less than 2 seconds. So when you can't stop guys from constantly putting your quarterback on the ground, you've got to adapt. And they successfully did that this week. Mm-hmm. Now, some teams that they're going to play are going to have the talent to press them and take that away from them. Some teams just aren't. And I think that that's a product of Odell Beckham being back. So I think him being back, it opens up a ton for Sterling Shepard. I like him. I'm putting him on whatever rosters I can without costing me, of course, a significant player.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think you add Sterling Shepard at this point, especially if you're having some injuries. We can't forget he had 105 targets last year, so it's not like this is brand new information. Is he going to keep giving you 7 receptions for 133 and a touchdown? Probably not, especially when Odell comes back. But he is going to keep getting looks. He's probably going to be in that 8 target per game range, which is great for a guy that you're not banking on to be your number 1.
Yep. All right, so the next guy here is probably a little bit of a deeper look at this point, but it might be a situation where you have to kind of buy in now to make sure you have him for later if you're interested. Talking about Alvin Kamara, running back of the New Orleans Saints. Might be too early at this point, but, as I said earlier, do you have to kind of buy in now on Kamara if you like his outlook moving forward?
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that if you want him, this is the time to get him before you run into your buys and people start really shopping around, or before he has a really big game. But I think at this point, Mark Ingram's still so far ahead of him. Adrian Peterson is an afterthought right now, but Kamara is the next man up, as your title says. But if you want him, this is the time, but I'm not sure he's going to be that beneficial for you.
Yeah, especially, we talked about similar to the Samaje Perine thing last week, where especially people who are with that free agency acquisition budget, and you've got to sort of put in budget requests for these guys, you can get him a lot cheaper now than you're going to have to in 4 or 5 weeks. I agree that as of right now, I have no interest, but I'm not in a league like that where I'm going to get him cheaper now than in 5 weeks.
So a lot cheaper.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me right now, no, it is an Ingram thing, but who knows if the season gets away from the Saints, which is possible. They showed a lot of spunk this week. I liked them a lot, but if it gets away from him, he's going to get the majority of those touches.
All right, let's move to the next name on the list here as we welcome Rocco in. Glad to get your technical issues out of the way there. Marquise Lee, wide receiver, Jacksonville Jaguars. We kind of wondered who was going to bubble to the top here. Last week it was Lee. A little bit of production from Hearns too the past couple weeks. It's a pretty inconsistent situation, and I don't know that I trust the situation entirely at this point, but might be the best wide receiver talent on the team. Is he worth a flyer at this point if you're looking for a plug-in?
Here's why you shouldn't be scared. I'm going to jump right in here. I owned Blake Bortles in every league last year, which is why you can attest, his terrible, terrible play last year. I own Blake Bortles 0 this year. So you guys can start believing in Blake Bortles again. All right? No, Marquise Lee is the best remaining talent on that team. I don't know what happened to Allen Hurns. He came out of the gate week 1 his rookie year, and he was just on fire. And we thought, oh, my God, this guy looks better than Allen Robinson. And then we learned what Allen Robinson was, and Hurns kind of took a step back. And now we're seeing what Marquise Lee is, and Hurns is kind of taking another step back. I think there's a lot of balls to go around in that offense, as we just saw with their 44-point outing against the Ravens last week. But, it's still the Jaguars, so I would still say enter with caution, even though he's probably the best receiving option they have. I mean, let's not overlook the fact that Mercedes Lewis caught all 3 touchdown passes last week. So
his first catches at all.
Well, yeah. Hurns did have one. I'm more interested in Hurns than Lee personally, and I know
Me too.
Lee had more targets last week, but Hurns has a nose for the end zone. He did two years ago when the Jags actually put up a lot of numbers. He did score this past week. Lewis only had 2 of them, Rock, to correct you. But
no, sorry.
Marquise Lee's a really good player, but he hasn't shown the nose for the end zone that Hurns does. And once we get into these types of names, guys, I mean, it needs to be – I think it's getting there, but it needs to be a really common saying in fantasy football when, hey, should I – this guy or this guy, this guy or this guy, who's going to score the touchdown? I mean, when you're getting into this tier of players, none of them are 60 yards better than the other one.
Right.
One of them might score. So if I'm trying to decide between Hurns and Lee, I want the guy who's shown the affinity to score the touchdown. And for me, it's absolutely Hurns. So, we're not talking about, hey, should I start Shady or Melvin Gordon? Well, all right, both of them. But when you get into these tiers where no one's a clear-cut favorite, who's going to score? Well, Bortles will throw it to Allen Hurns in the end zone. He's shown that he will. So that's the guy I'm actually – and I like him a lot. I picked him up in a few spots. I got a waiver request in for him in 1 week, 1 league this week. So we'll see what happens. But, Lee is solid. You could do a lot worse. I'd rather have Hurns, though.
All right, let's talk about another wide receiver here. Taylor Gabriel makes the list. Being added, he had a pretty decent game in week 3. He's wide receiver for the Falcons, obviously. Slow first 2 weeks. Atlanta made it a point last week to get him a little bit more involved. They talked about how they needed to get him more involved. He showed some of that explosiveness that he had last season. Is Taylor Gabriel a guy who is worth a spot on a roster right now?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I feel like we had this talk around week 10 last year, and my opinion is the same. No, hold on, let me lie. My opinion is different. Last year, I was not interested in Taylor Gabriel, but this year I am. I mean, he's the clear-cut 3 in an offense that chucks it all around the place, and more importantly, an offense that chucks it around the place and doesn't care about Julio Jones.
Yeah,
I'm starting to hate Matt Ryan the way I hate Derek Carr. I'm done ranting about that. Gabriel, yes. Julio Jones, cut him. You might as well cut him. He's not scoring this year.
All right, so I'm gonna bring us back down.
Chill.
Oh yeah, let's bring this back down to reality here.
I just went 1-7. I don't even know I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done fantasy before. I went 1-7 this week in fantasy. I'm gonna let everybody know. 1-7. You know why? Because I have Julio Jones.
Hey, we keep it transparent here. Rock, you were going to
Gabriel.
My 1 was beating Rocco. That doesn't even count.
Man. That seemed unnecessary.
All right.
Yeah, this is really going downhill.
Rocco,
fast.
what were you going to say?
No to Taylor Gabriel.
That's all.
No, it's just like I like Taylor Gabriel. He's a nice piece, but he's one of those guys where he's nice to have. I like him more in a daily play. When the matchup is right and you can kind of predict him to score, because I think he's really dependent on scoring at this point. Or I mean, depending on your league settings too. I mean, PPR he's maybe a little bit higher value, but realistically, you need him to get in the end zone, and that's one of those crapshoot ones. So I know I'm not going to roster him as a wide receiver 2 or 3, but I could definitely see as a flex spot, or like I said, I love when we're talking daily plays on someone like Taylor Gabriel, because you can get him on the cheap. Because they have Julio Jones.
That's right. All right, let's jump down to the next player here. Deal's going to love talking about this guy. I just know it. Dante Foreman, running back, Texans. He's taken on more and more work. He's been surprisingly kind of productive for them. He's got a higher yards per carry than Lamar Miller, which really isn't saying much because Lamar Miller's yards per carry is whatever he can fall forward. So is this a player who is worth at least keeping on your radar at this point?
I think he's worth keeping on your radar. But, man, I watched that game on Sunday, and I was just telling you guys ahead of time here. He is the least elusive back I've ever seen. Like, even bad backs. It was amazing watching him. He took one down the sideline, and he doesn't run particularly fast anyways, but there was a safety coming at him, and he didn't do anything. Like, didn't brace for impact, didn't step out of bounds, didn't lower his shoulder into the guy. He just looked at the guy and kept running as if he looked at him and didn't see him coming. It was amazing. He didn't do anything, like, at all.
I mean, he's a little bit of a bigger back, I guess, so I wouldn't say that,
that's all, though.
Like, yeah, but like Sal just mentioned, if Lamar, like, first of all, how bad is Lamar Miller? I think we all expected like him to break out huge, and now we're talking about a rookie in his third game, possibly taking more and more of the carries away. I think it's important to watch just because I think going forward, that Houston Texans team still has a shot at that division just because of how weak the division looks. I mean, the Titans look okay, but I mean, after that, it's just wishy-washy. So I think they want to protect Deshaun, and the way to do that is to keep him comfortable in the pocket and run the ball, play action. So I think there's going to be a lot of carries in that backfield to go around. Like I said about Freeman and Tevin earlier on this offseason, they can both be 15 to 18 touchbacks because after Hopkins and the wide receiving core, they don't have a heck of a lot, in terms of depth. So I think they could absolutely both get fed.
Yeah, I'm not touching the situation, honestly. I just think that the running game overall is just dreadful right now. I'd rather pass on both of them, to be honest with you. And you said that we kind of thought that Lamar Miller could be something. Those words never came out of my mouth. I've been screaming from the rooftops since day one that Lamar Miller is not the answer. So I mean, that's probably my one of like 100 things that I scream about that I get right, but I'm going to never let you hear the end of it. So, all right, let's talk about, we'll skip down to the bottom player here just because for time's sake. Chris Thompson, running back, Washington Redskins. He's being added in the leagues that he could be added in at this point. It's probably too late in a lot of really competitive leagues, but if he's available, especially in a PPR, you have to get this guy, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty much a no-brainer. I think I looked up earlier. I'm trying to quick get the number. He's in half PPR. He's the number 3 running back right now.
He was number 5 last week, so had to go up.
Yeah, he was number 5, and he went bananas on Monday night. But I'm trying to get his own percentage here. He's the number 3 fantasy running back, and he is owned in 76% of leagues. Like,
wow.
Surrounded by hundreds. Kareem Hunt, 100%. Chris Thompson, 67%.
Yeah.
Freeman, 100%. Like everybody else, I pick him up. I mean, there's no way he's not 100 after this week. I looked, he's owned in all my leagues, so nothing I can do about it at this point. But yeah, he looks awesome.
Yeah, there's not a ton that we really need to add there. If he's available, you got to scoop him up because he's making plays happen for the Redskins, and they seem to kind of be hitting their stride a little bit right now. So that could be a scary situation if you can scoop him up and get that production.
Chris Thompson.
The other two guys can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
The other 2 guys can't stay healthy on top of it. So,
and the other 2 guys are nothing like him. Like he is the antithesis of both of them. So.
Right.
I just really wanted to get Miles fired up. I was going to say that Chris Thompson looks like this year's Danny Woodhead. So, you got to grab him. He's going to be on championship rosters.
Right, but with talent. Danny Woodhead was good. Crazy.
All right, we're going to jump into our no huddle here, but let's take a question first. The Cards Rule 11 on YouTube wants to know, what's up? I need to start 2 receivers, 12-team PPR. I got Garcon, Deshaun Jackson, Amari Cooper, Decker, and Tyrell Williams. What do you guys think?
I would keep a close eye on the injury report in Philadelphia's secondary. Based on what I just saw, I mean, Tyrell Williams is at least as talented as this age Brandon Marshall and Sterling Shepard. So based on their health situation, Tyrell Williams is a tough bench for me. I love Deshaun. I love Garcon. I personally just went through my lineups, and these guys can attest. I benched Amari Cooper this week. I can't handle it anymore. And I don't have much interest in Decker. So I would keep an eye on Philly's injury report. If their guys are coming back, it looks like Rodney McLeod might play. They're coming back. I'd probably go with Garcon and Deshaun. Otherwise, I'd pick your favorite of the two of them, and then roll with Tyrell Williams as my other one.
Yeah, I'm in on Pierre and Deshaun as well. Kind of ironic. We just came off talking about the Redskins, and we're talking about the two guys that moved on from the Redskins as the starters here. I also like Tyrell Williams as a thought, just because he's a guy who is going to move around on the field, and that's kind of what Sterling Shepard did last week and was very successful. He ended up hitting a big one. Tyrell Williams kind of has that same ability to hit one of those big ones. You know, Rivers isn't shy about spreading the ball around, so I would just second that. You watch the injury report, and I would consider him potentially over Deshaun Jackson.
Am I the only person in the world who's not giving up on Amari Cooper yet?
Well, I don't think I'm fully given up, but against Denver,
the matchup isn't great.
I mean, Denver's shutting him down like crazy, and he can't catch the ball this year. He keeps the rare occasion Carr throws it to him, he drops it. He's killing him.
If Miles starts Amari Cooper this week, Rod Streeter is going to have 3 touchdowns.
Seth Roberts at least 2.
Right. All right, let's jump into our no huddle here. There's just some rapid responses to some of the bigger storylines around the league right now and moving forward. Which player who rebounded in week 3 do you expect to be the most consistent moving forward? AJ Green, T.Y. Hilton, or Odell Beckham?
I love this question right now, and South, not to exclude you, but like you're talking about each one of our favorite wide receivers in the NFL for the most part. Deal with T.Y., Miles with AJ, and me with Odell. So, and I would not be surprised if that's exactly how we answer this question. It's got to be Odell. He's the best of the 3, and like that's not debatable. He's absolutely the best of the 3. Don't give me that face. I love AJ too. He's absolutely the best of the 3. So stop. He's the best of the 3, and he's had to suffer through his whole career with Eli Manning as his quarterback.
Andy Dalton is a superstar.
So
let me tell you.
You got the red rocket versus the face.
It's the red
so
rifle.
I mean, the red rifle
The
versus
red rocket
the face.
is not what we want to call him.
I absolutely agree with you. It's Odell. There's no question. If for no other reason than say what you want about Eli, and I have in the past said plenty of things about Eli, he is actually the most consistent of the 3 quarterbacks, which says a lot about Andy Dalton and Tolzien / Brissett / Luck and his arm. So I hated this question because when I first read it, I'm like, I absolutely want all 3 of those players because Luck's coming back in a matter of a couple of weeks. And AJ Green, as we call it on this podcast last week, is going to be forced the ball now with the new offensive coordinator. They got to keep the guy happy. Absolutely the best receiver up there. He's got the most consistent quarterback situation. He's going to get the targets. I'll say useful player in the red zone of those 3. So I agree with Odell.
Guys, I am going with AJ Green. I just think that they're going to force so much volume to him. Getting Joe Mixon more involved is going to help. I know Brandon LaFell is not a world beater, but he just seems to be one of those guys that for whatever reason, if you don't cover him, he'll kill you. So you can't just completely ignore him. Whereas the Giants really haven't shown me any consistency. So they had one week where, Eli got 34 passes off in less than 2 seconds. They're not going to play a defense who's starting their 4th, 5th corner, their 3rd safety every week, who has to play back and, just worry about keeping everything in front of them. So I know Odell's special. I just feel like the Bengals are going to do more right now to force their offense to be more productive.
I think it's Odell. Like I agree that, and we all said it last week that they're going to force AJ the ball, but Odell doesn't need the ball forced to him to be productive. Like it's just what he does. So when he comes back, he's going to be healthy and he's going to be productive because he's always productive no matter what.
If nothing, South. The only reason I disagree is because if nothing else, the Giants just realized like, hey, the only chance we have at scoring 20 points in a game is getting Odell the ball. Like, yes, it was the Eagles were banged up, but you had week 1 no Odell, 3 points. Week 2 with a semi-healthy Odell, 10 points. Week 3, 27 points. So like how, they exactly what you just said about AJ is what they're realizing about Odell. So,
yeah. All right, let's move on to the next question here. Do you buy in on the Rams and what they're doing right now, or do you need to see it against a little bit better competition? The offense looks good so far. I threw this stat out there the other day to you guys that Sean McVay already has more 40-point coaching performances than Jeff Fisher had in his 68-year coaching career, and McVay's only coached 3 games. So are you guys buying in, or do you need to see it against a higher level of competition?
I'm like right in the middle, not to be wishy-washy. Like,
but you will.
But I will. Like, no, like obviously, I think this is great for them. Goff is making me eat my words because I thought he was going to be a bust after last year. I thought he had too much of a laid-back attitude to play quarterback in the NFL. I didn't think that was going to work. He seems to be, maturing, and I'm not saying he's like arrived yet, but he's definitely much further along already than I thought he would be. Todd looks good again, like we thought he could, because he's got something to, help him out. He's got a quarterback to get the ball, move the ball down the field and not have 8-man fronts and 9-man fronts, so the defense is what it is. It's been good for a couple of years now. So I want to say I'm ready to buy in, but at the same time, I don't know if they can like overcome Seattle in that division in the long run. I mean, Seattle's looked pretty bad through 3 weeks, but I don't know if they have the sustainability to show me this for 16 games yet. So that's what I want to see. I want to see how long it can play out for them.
I'm absolutely buying in. I'm not saying they're winning the Super Bowl this year, but I am saying that they turned a big corner, and I'll say that Miles and I, like back in May, were watching simultaneously a replay of a Rams game, and we were both like, yo, this dude's going to be good, because he was throwing good balls that we didn't really see, because I admittedly didn't watch a lot of Rams games last year. But, man, I watched that game this past week, and dude was throwing dimes. Like, he looked fantastic. He looked like a seasoned quarterback making good decisions, throwing balls right on the money. He should have had about 100 extra yards on drops and a pass interference call. So he had an excellent game. Todd looks good again. The defense is up and coming. It's a really young team. So, man, I think that team, as I was watching that game with my father-in-law on Thursday, I was like, these guys they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a really good team.
I think more than anything, they just have the right coach, to be honest with you. Like, it just seems like McVay is the right guy. You see the way that he's, like when the defense is on the field, he doesn't have to sweat about it. You know what I mean? Like, he can go over and be with the offense, or he was getting ripped because he was
sitting on a cooler,
on the Gatorade cooler. But like, that's fine. If like the creative genius wheels are spinning and you're going to come out and just lay the hammer down again, I don't care where you sit or what you do. Just keep putting up the points. The play calling is, conducive to what Goff can do. So, they're finding more ways to get Gurley involved, which is smart. And you hit the nail on the head. They're young. They're only going to get better throughout the season. So I do want to see them play against some of the better teams, but sure, I think they're going to continue to get more and more competitive.
How crazy is it that Sean McVay is younger than all 4 of us?
It's crazy.
That's nuts.
Makes me feel bad too.
that was my intent, to make us feel like crap.
He's younger than all 4 of us, and if we combine the collective like hair quality of all 4 of us, he has better hair too. So I mean, that head of hair never moves.
That seemed like a cheap shot.
It's not a cheap shot. I'm just saying, like, the guy could wear headphones the whole time and his hair doesn't even move. I don't know what he's got, what kind of product he's got in there, but I need to get on board.
Why do you think I wear hats?
All right, let's talk about this. Is Stefon Diggs a must start in fantasy at this point, as a lot of people are proclaiming? Or are we just giving way too much credit and we were a little bit overconfident on the Bucs after what we saw out of their first game?
He's at least a must start at home. I mean, they're spoiler alert to my power rankings coming out tomorrow, but they're a little bit of a different team at home. You know, I said in this space on Sunday morning, I don't really want to touch the Vikings, and now I want them all at home.
At least for that split.
Yeah, they're just an excellent team at home. I mean, we'll see on the road if he proves to be a little bit better. Obviously, week 2, he struggled a little bit, but guy can play, man. He gets open. He's got great hands. It's a knack for making big plays. Those dudes exist. You know, it's guy that falls to the 6th round because the measurables aren't there, and nobody can tell you why it works, but they just have a nose for making plays, and he's that guy.
At first, I kind of thought that this was a product of like, well, we just got overhyped on the Bucs defense or whatever. But I mean, you're looking at the fact that he's making basically, you know, chump change quarterbacks look elite with what he's able to do. So at this point, like he's a matchup nightmare for opposing corners. He's just doing very impressive things. And you are right. When they play at home, it's strange, but I don't know if it's like the big Viking horn or all the skull chants or whatever, but something is making it work for them. So I think you got to start him.
At this pace, he's due for 16 touchdowns, and that's just in the home games. So he scores any on the road, he's going over 20. So
all right, let's answer this question here. We had this on the agenda last week, and we kind of got away from it. I want to come back to it. Give me a player that fantasy owners should be trying to buy low on right now.
I'll jump in. I think Lev Bell. He's been horrible, and he's going to turn it around. So I don't know, just for namesake, I don't know how cheap you can get him, but you can get him cheaper than his value going forward, I think. So I think if you're struggling right now at running back, you have some excess somewhere else, I think he's worth going in on.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where you'll get him for cheaper than what you would have got him for before week 1.
Yeah.
And cheaper than what you'll probably have to give up to get him 4 weeks from now.
Right, exactly.
Like, now is the exact right time for a guy like Bell.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Julio Jones. I mean, I just went off on him.
I'm going to buy him from you.
Yeah. But you know, if I'm ready to give up on Julio Jones,
everybody
there are people everywhere ready to give up on this guy. And you know, none of us are going to say, whatever, give me, you know, Dante Foreman for him. But I think he can be had, and that's usually the type of player that no one trades. You can't have him, period. Well, he can be had out there, and go grab him, because truth be told, you know, his owners are frustrated because he hasn't seen the end zone, but he is putting up numbers. You know, he's got over 90 yards in the last 2 games. Matt Ryan knows where his bread's buttered when the game comes down to it. So when they get some closer games, he's got to get looks. He's explosive. He doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. It's been the knock on him his whole career, but he did catch for 300 yards last year in a game. Yep. So, I mean, the big plays are always there waiting. You won't regret trading for him.
Yeah, I'm going back to the running back position, and time is running out on this one, but it's Joe Mixon right now. I mean, he went from basically playing around 30% of the snaps to like almost 60 just this past week. And their offense,
he looked good.
He did look good. And their offense looked markedly improved as a whole. I mean, they almost knocked off the Packers, you know, from the slop that they put out there the first 2 weeks. So I would expect that with a changeover at the offensive coordinator, they're going to do whatever they have to do to continue to put the ball into the hands of the best players on the field. Joe Mixon is one of those best players on the field. So I expect that 60% of snaps number to go up. I mean, you might still get some Gio Bernard here and there, but Jeremy Hill might as well start walking to the bus stop now, as far as I'm concerned. Joe Mixon is going to completely take over that situation within the next couple of weeks. And I think that with more opportunity, we're going to start to see how much of a superstar this guy is.
I'm buying in early now on Carson Wentz. So you guys can be excited that I'm saying that. I think that's a guy that people should be targeting if he's not already owned in your league, because you're a standard one quarterback league and he probably wasn't drafted. He might be somebody's backup. I think this is a guy going forward that's going to give you top 10 performances every week, sheerly by just straight volume. So with the Sproles injury, this is a guy that they're going to throw 40 times a game, 45 times a game. It's going to happen. I guarantee it going forward. They are. After watching them last week, they tried the running attack. It really kind of bit them in the butt in the second half, and they let the Giants back in that game. And now you're down Sproles. So, I mean, you still have Smallwood, you still have Corey Clement, but I just see Carson putting up big numbers for the rest of the year because I just think they're going to be throwing the ball all over the place.
All right, guys, last one here. On the flip side, give me a player that fantasy owners should try to sell high on right now.
I think for me, and I'm kind of bending around the question. We're early in the fantasy season, but we're late enough that these guys like Diggs and Hunt, like those are the immediate answers to this question in your brain, because you're saying, hey, these guys blew up like crazy multiple times now. They can't sustain that pace. But you don't want to be the guy that trades away Kareem Hunt that ends the season as RB1 because you were scared he couldn't maintain his pace. So I'm going to ignore the question. I'm going to say there isn't one right now because I think the real answers are like Alex Smith. Nobody's going to give you much for him. You know what I mean? No matter what his numbers look at, you're not getting a lot. You're going to get a ton for Hunt. You're going to get a lot for Diggs. But you can't trade away David Johnson because you tripped into him. You know what I mean? So I would say at this point, I'm done trying to sell high. I'm riding these waves. I like buying low. Let's buy low, and I liked all four answers that we gave. But for me, I'm not trying to sell high anymore. I'm going to relish the fact that I have that guy.
I actually do have a guy here, and this is a kind of a unique situation in a couple of ways. Number one, because I was ringing the bell for this guy for so long. My answer. It's Jay Ajayi.
Oh, never mind.
And I was also hype on him, but I'm a little worried that he might be injured and just trying to play through it. So it might be kind of like a dirt ball sell high based on the fact that he was considered, a first or second round pick, but he just looks a little bit tentative at this point. I can't find any other reason why he's not getting a little bit more, volume with the carries or whatever. I'm sure over time that's going to pick up as well, but he just doesn't look right to me. He actually looks like he's playing through something. And I know that in the past he's had some issues with his knees. So you got to wonder if that kind of plays into it at all. I don't know. I've just kind of done like a complete 180 on him at this point. If I have him, I'm going to, hold on to him if the offer's not right, but just something is scaring me a little bit.
My sell high guy is Ty Montgomery. I'm not just saying that to be a hater, but he's putting up good numbers right now, but there's been so many times already in games that he's just on the field 90% of the time. So he's gotten nicked up with little injuries that are going to accumulate, add up. I was in on Jamal Williams. I didn't think he was going to lead the league in rushing or anything, but I thought he was going to be productive. I think he's still going to see the field because I think Ty Montgomery is going to last. And as much as you love to beat up Jeremy Hill, your guy's running for 3 yards per carry south. So he's not putting up much production in the running game. As far as receiving, he is getting some receptions, but that's his best part of his game by a lot. So I don't see a lot of production towards the end of the season when he peters out because of too much usage.
And my guy I'm sticking with the quarterback. I'm trying to sell Cam Newton at this point, and I'm hoping that I can get a good return for him at this point.
That's a sell low.
What? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you can still get a decent return for him in the hopes that the rest of the world thinks that, he's got to be able to bounce back. He's Cam Newton. 2 years ago, he was the MVP of the league. Miles, I'm finally all in. I think that Super Bowl messed his head up, man. Either that or his fashion sense is messing with his head, or the hats that he wears are on too tight, or I don't know what it is, but it seems like he just has not been able to bounce back from that Super Bowl. And every week we're like, all right, this is the week Cam's going to come out and do it. You know, he's playing the Saints. He's got to be able to do it this week. Listen, if he didn't do it last week against the Saints, he's not doing it. So I'm trying to sucker somebody into hoping, having a high hopes for Cam Newton, and I'll just take that to the bank.
The trouble is the candidate that would be somebody to trade Cam for already sucked and picked up Alex Smith. So he got the greatest quarterback of all time already. So
oh goodness, we got to move on. We got to move on quick. I could see the veins popping in Miles' head.
Really irritated.
All right. Another quick question here from YouTube. Should I trade Christian McCaffrey and Travis Kelce for Le'Veon Bell? I lost David Johnson and he lost Greg Olsen.
I responded on there. I wouldn't do it. If it's a PPR league especially, I think Christian McCaffrey is going to put up nutsos numbers when it comes to catches and yards. He was over 100 this last week. I'm not saying he's going to end with Le'Veon Bell's numbers, but Travis Kelce to literally anyone is a downgrade, a big downgrade. So I'm not sure in a PPR I think Bell's as much an upgrade as Kelce is going to be a downgrade to whomever you're going to pick up.
Yeah, I don't think I would do it unless you have some kind of a like nutso bananas running back roster, which I'm guessing that, you know, if you lost David Johnson,
right.
If you lost David Johnson, I'm guessing you're probably decently thin there. But, you know, I'm not sure that I'm going to panic in a PPR on that because there are options available. Christian McCaffrey's going to get his, and you're probably, you know, a step ahead of other teams right now with having Travis Kelce. So I think I'd actually stand pat on that. All right, guys, let's take a second and talk about our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. See, our friends at Gorb tell us that in life, you've only got two choices. You can get hungry or you can be hungry. And really what that's all about is getting hungry is going after the things in life that you want to achieve, those dreams that you have. And for us, it was launching this podcast and this show. You know, if you don't get hungry and go after those kind of things, then you're going to be hungry and be wishing constantly that you would have taken that step, that you would have jumped out there and put yourself out there and went for it. And, you know, we don't typically promote things that we don't believe in. And we're 100% bought in on this, not just because we get, you know, sweet gear, as you could see that I'm sporting right now, but it gives us a constant reminder of what we're going after. We're trying to get hungry instead of being hungry. And, you know, there's something out there as far as apparel. If you visit their website, for literally everyone, they've got all kinds of colors, styles, hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, all kinds of stuff. They've got something for everybody. It's all comfortable. It's all, you know, relatively affordable compared to, you know, all this other nonsense out there that you'll have to buy in the stores that they want to charge you an arm and a leg and your firstborn for. So we want you guys to check it out. GHORBH.com. Get hungry or be hungry. All right, guys, it's that time of the week to jump into our Goons and Ghosts here. For those of you who are not familiar with it, our Goons are the guys that we're getting into the lineups this week. We're expecting that they're going to overachieve based on where they're pre-ranked for this week. And our Ghosts are guys that are going to underperform. They're going to not perform as well as what they are pre-ranked. So let's jump right into it this week. I'm actually going to go first on the Goons this week. And my Goon is, you guys are never going to guess this, Willie Sneed. He is back from suspension. He is pre-ranked right now as wide receiver 45. Yeah, I said that. Wide receiver 45 for Willie Sneed. There's no way he's even coming close to falling that far back this week. His first game back from suspension. He's got healthy legs underneath him. He's got the benefit of, you know, coming into a Saints offense that kind of hit their stride a little bit last week finally. He's going to see a ton of underneath looks because it's become more and more apparent that Ted Ginn has taken the top off of defenses still at this point. Miami is the 5th worst defense versus the pass so far this year. They just got shredded by the staggering Jets offense last week. Looked terrible as a defensive unit.
Oh, I love it.
They've got a 79% completion percentage against them from quarterbacks right now. Are there that many quarterbacks around that are more accurate and more precise than Drew Brees? Drew Brees is going to light these guys up this week. He's going to spread the ball around. They're giving up 278 yards per game to some pretty rough passing attacks to this point. They haven't even sniffed, an elite one at this point, and now you're going to have the Saints roll in. They've got a rough travel week going over to London after laying an absolute egg against the Jets last week. I think it all adds up for a very high performance for Willie Sneed this week. 7 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. He's my goon of the week. Deal, who's your goon?
So last week, mistakes were made. You see, what had happened was I got my stuff messed up, and then when you said goon, I thought that you said ghost, that's who you wanted me to give you, and then you said ghost, and I thought you said goon, but clearly I meant Martavis was going to bonk and be terrible, and I meant that Cooks was going to eat, because I said he was going to develop chemistry at some point with Tom Brady, and it was last week. That's when it happened, so obviously
that's not how I remember it. That's not how I remember it.
But this week, I'm going to get back on track with Run CMC, Christian McCaffrey. He is ranked running back 16 this week. Last week, like Rocco said they would, little shout out where credit's due. They got McCaffrey way more involved in the passing game. And he only had 4 rushes for 16 yards, but a lot of that's because they were losing the entire game. And the part where he was really dominating, he had 9 receptions for 101 yards. And last week, he was in the game for 41 out of 59 snaps compared to Stewart's 26 of 59. On the season, their splits are 67.5% for McCaffrey, 41.2% for Stewart, which is going to lean even more in McCaffrey's favor at this point. And this week they go up against the Patriots, who have been very susceptible to that scat athletic running back. They gave up 246 total yards and 3 scores the hunt in game 1. Game 2, they adjusted a little more, but gave up 56 yards to Kamara in very limited action. Last week they gave up 90 yards to Dante Foreman, who I talked about, not an elusive guy, and they gave up 90 total yards to him. So, at all, I like the Panthers to lose this game and be down a lot of the game, but they're going to give McCaffrey a lot of looks in that. I think he goes for 146 total yards and he scores at least 1 this week. He's a must start, my goon of the week.
All right, Miles, who do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm going with Sammy Watkins, receiver of the Rams. He is pre-ranked as the 21st wide receiver. So, Sammy and this Rams newly potent offense, they head into Dallas on Sunday, facing off against the Cowboys, who are 20th ranked passing and defense. But more importantly, they've given up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers so far this year, including 2 touchdowns in each of the last 2 weeks. So, the other thing, Dallas' offense is pretty good. So they're going to score against the Rams. If the Niners can put up 39, I feel like Zeke and Dak might have a nice little bounce back game here. So I think Jared Goff's going to have to throw. So enter Sammy Watkins. He's coming off a 6-catch, 106-yard, 2-touchdown line just last week against a similarly porous San Francisco secondary. And I expect that chemistry to translate for the second straight week. I'm looking for, nothing super special about that exact same line that he put up last Thursday. I'm not going to hit you with 200 yards here. This is not the Miles of last year. But I will say that 6 for 106 and 2 line landed him wide receiver 4 last week, I'm sorry. So I say roll with Sammy. He's going to give you wide receiver 1 production yet again, much better than his 21 pre-rank.
All right, Rocco, round us out. Who is your goon?
I noticed that even though Deal went with McCaffrey, we all kind of have receiving options here. FanDuel's really become, and DraftKings have really become more receiver-oriented with the half-point PPR this year, and that's why I'm going with Jarvis Landry. He's wide receiver 24 this week. I'll start off by saying that Jarvis absolutely needs to get into the end zone. Okay, I understand that, and if you're a fantasy owner of Jarvis Landry, you're probably frustrated because the guy never scores. However, in just 2 games this year, he's got 26 targets already. All right. South, you say it all the time, volume is king. He's averaging 13 targets per game because you got to remember, he's missed a game because of Hurricane Irma. That makes him 9th in the league in receptions and tied for 11th in targets, despite playing 1 fewer game than every guy on the list ahead of him. So, eventually these targets have to turn into touchdowns. Now they're already turning into yards for him. So we're not just going to say that hasn't produced with those targets. Obviously, we know he needs to get in the end zone, and that's going to be a big plus. But he is playing a Niners team this week that has been pretty bad so far this year. I mean, we just watched Goff and Watkins light them up. Like you said, Miles, Sammy Watkins had, 101 yards and 2 scores against them. I look for very similar numbers from Jarvis. He's a target monster this week. I like 9 catches, 125, and a touchdown.
All right, let's get into our ghosts this week, or the guys who are ranked a little bit higher, who we don't think are going to live up to those expectations. Deal, start us off.
My ghost this week, which I reserve the right to change to Goon if he plays well, because
that's not how this works.
I reserved the right already.
I reserved the right to edit that and strike it from the conversation.
This is a live podcast, and I already reserved the right. All right. My ghost this week is Dez Bryant, wide receiver number 11. Week 1, I'll give you some stats here. Week 1, wide receiver 55. Week 2, turned it around, wide receiver 12. But also, even week 2 was kind of a more pedestrian week for wide receivers. So his numbers weren't that impressive still. But then week 3, back to wide receiver 43. I will say that Rocco and I were out on Dez in the preseason rankings, and we took a lot of heat for it. But he looks bad, man. He doesn't look like an elite receiver anymore. Now, I know a lot of players, receivers, running backs, their numbers are down right now. But just watching the guy play, he just doesn't really look like that same elite guy anymore. He's been all over the map. And this week I look for the Cowboys to get back to that ground and pound, try to get Zeke out of that sophomore slump. And I think Dez drops back down, no pun intended, into that wide receiver 27 range. I think he'll be 6 receptions, 78 yards, no scores. He's my ghost of the week.
All right, Miles, who's your ghost?
My ghost actually hurts a little bit because I love this guy, but I'm going with Devonta Freeman, running back from Atlanta. Guy's pre-ranked as the 7th running back, and he's actually, it's kind of hard to put this on him because he's one of the few consensus top picks from this August draft season who's delivering what we expected, as he's currently sitting at running back number 4.5 PPR. Guy's been excellent. On top of that, he's been consistent. He's scored in all 3 of the Falcons' games this year. My problem is this week they run into a Bills defense, which has allowed the 2nd fewest fantasy points to running backs to this point. Jamal Charles this past week became the first running back to score on them. He's also the only running back to run for more than 40 yards against the Bills this year in 3 games. Now, I'm going to tell you, of course, Freeman is the best running back they've seen so far in their 3 games. My problem is his pre-ranking at number 7 overall. He's going to get some of his – I'm not going to tell you the guy's going to run for 13 yards, but I like him for about 80 to 90 total yards, but more importantly, out of the end zone for Devonta Freeman this week, leaving you sad at 8 to 9 fantasy points, thirsting for another RB1 finish the next week.
All right, Rocco, who do you got for us?
I took Brandon Cooks. Mainly, biggest reason this week is just because of his ranking. He comes in at wide receiver number 8. Listen, Cooks had a great game last week, and I get that. And it was against a tough Texas defense on top of it. He had 5 catches on 7 targets for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. Knowing that, this week Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are going to ignore him because that's what they do. but seriously, I feel like that's just the way they do things down there, is that they try not to focus on one guy, too often, just because they know that the other teams are going to expect it. My bigger issue here is the pre-ranking. Okay, they're facing a Panthers D who's 3rd against the pass. Okay, and although Cooks does have the elite speed to blow the top off of some defenses, I think this week you'd really need him to score to have a good impact and get you to that wide receiver 8 spot. So for me, it's just not worth the price this week. I mean, if you're using him in daily fantasy, it's 7,900 on FanDuel and a wide receiver 7 ranking. That's a lot to give up for a guy who's probably not going to get in the end zone against the number 3 pass defense in the Panthers. So that's where it lies for me. It's too rich for my blood. You know, you can find much better production elsewhere, probably for a lot cheaper.
All right, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to ghost Matthew Stafford, who's playing at a pretty high level right now.
I hate you. Listen,
the Vikings, believe it or not, they're the 6th worst defense versus the pass, which may come as a surprise. It's early on. Xavier Rhodes tends to shut down whoever he's covering. Detroit has shown that they don't need to rely on, just one guy. So you would think, okay, so you're setting yourself up to look really bad here. But the Vikings also have an interception in each game this season against a guy who doesn't mind occasionally putting it up for grabs. He's kind of gotten a little bit better in that area, but he's still prone to the occasional turnover. Stafford starts slow and he comes on late. And I think the Vikings are built to stop the pass in the long run here. I know they haven't looked great so far, but I expect that they're going to turn that around. I expect that it's going to be as soon as this week. They're able to get after the quarterback a little bit as well. They get some pressure up front. I just think that if the Lions get behind in this game, it could be tough sledding if they can just kind of pin their ears back and get after them. The game, in my opinion, is actually going to be a little bit more low scoring than people would think. In 2 games last year, the Vikes had 3 interceptions against Matthew Stafford. So they kind of had his number last year in that regard with the turnovers. I think it's going to be too much of a one-dimensional attack. I don't think the Lions are committed to running the football. Even though they try to get after it a little bit, it's just still not a commitment for them. I'm going to temper my expectations, basically. He's the 9th overall ranked quarterback right now. I just think this is going to be a little bit more of an ugly divisional game. I don't like him to finish as a top 10. I think, he's somewhere around 15, 16 at the best. 216 yards, a touchdown, and an interception this week. He is my ghost, for this week. All right, let's talk about some daily fantasy football values here. Obviously, with daily fantasy football, you can't afford to pay for all of the most expensive players. So you need to find values. And that's what we're trying to highlight in this segment. Give you a value, a little bit cheaper player who we think is going to perform somewhere near those expensive players to free up some cash so that you can use it on those stud players. Miles, why don't you start us off? Who is your daily fantasy value?
I am making my final stand with Cam Newton. My final stand. This is the last one. Cam can be had for $7,300 on FanDuel. He is priced as the 17th quarterback headed into this week, the same range as rookie Deshaun Watson and an injured Sam Bradford. That's what they think of him right now. And you know what? To this point, they're overvaluing him, putting him in that tier, which is scary. But, I put a ton of faith in this guy in August during draft season. I own him a lot. Big reason why I went 1-7 this past week. All right, but, speaking of Deshaun Watson, he just put up 301 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air against the Patriots on Sunday. Noteworthy, that's the fewest yards the Patriots have given up against an opposing QB this season, 301. That's their low. Also noteworthy, Cam Newton is facing the Patriots this week. It's time to get it done, Cam. Teams have to throw to keep up with Brady, so it's skewing those numbers a little bit. But on top of that, the Pats just aren't good enough in the secondary to slow them down. Cam has got to get it going this week. 32nd ranked defense against the pass, or we could be looking at by week 4 this season is completely lost for this guy. And I'm already doing research for next year's fantasy draft personally. All right, but I'm going to bet on for at least 1 week here, MVP Cam Newton showing up in Foxborough. He's going to deliver a QB1 week. I don't mean the top scoring guy, but one of the top 10. All right, boosting his value very, very high. With the market being where it is, I think this is the cheapest you're going to get Cam Newton all season. He will turn it around. I'm speaking that to the football gods. I believe. All right, but more importantly, whether he turns it around or not, I do believe he has a great week this week, way, way higher than his $7,300 price tag would suggest.
All right, Rocco, who do you got for us? Daily fantasy value.
I went with J.J. Nelson, moderately priced at $5,900. And even though he gave us a 0 for 0 for 0 stat line on Monday night against the Cowboys, I still like J.J. this week. He's priced fairly, I said, at $5,900. He's averaging 11 fantasy points per game in a half-point PPR situation, even with that 0-point outing, last night. So knowing that and facing the Niners secondary, that's right now right in the middle of the pack, ranked 16, I like JJ to far outproduce his 5,900 wide receiver 35 ranking. I'm looking at a fair stat line, 5 catches, 97 yards, and a score.
All right. And my daily fantasy value this week, I'm going down in that similar price range, $5,600 for Cooper Kupp. This is really a gut feeling on this one this week. The Rams are going to play the Cowboys. Dallas has surrendered to this point the most completions of any team in the league at 80. Kupp is a possession type receiver. He's developing a rapport, obviously, with his young quarterback. He should be able to create some coverage issues. Dallas is very banged up in the secondary. They had a very hard time, obviously, with an elite Hall of Fame talent in Larry Fitzgerald. But Cooper Kupp can present some of those issues for them where he's going to line up all over the place, outside, inside, wherever, and just create some matchup issues for him. So I just think that overall he's going to just have an outstanding day, get a lot of targets, have a lot of catches. As I said, Fitz killed them, similar to what I think the Rams are going to try and do against Dallas this week. I like him for just 5,600 cabbage to give you 9 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. He's my daily value this week. Deal, finish us off.
My daily play is a guy we talked a little bit about a while ago here, Joe Mixon for $5,600, because why wouldn't I come back to support the Bengals one more time? Last week, the Bengals began to turn over the keys of the kingdom to Joe Mixon. Now, that kingdom that the Bengals have isn't that great, but it's Mixon's kingdom. So Mixon has 34 snaps versus 13 for Gio, 14 for Hill. And Bill Lazor seems to be a little bit smarter. He gave Mixon 101 total yards, forced the ball to AJ like we said he should for 10 receptions for 111 and a touchdown. Nice job, Bill. You're doing a better job there. I actually would vote you in for head coach at this point. This week, Mixon goes up against a Cleveland team that gave up 57 yards and a score to 59-year-old Frank Gore, and made the entire world think that they should rush out and buy Buck Allen 2 weeks ago. So last week I said Chris Thompson was a steal at $5,600. Forget who I said was Goon and Ghost, because I made up for it on that one. Stop living in the past, man. This week I love Mixon at the same price tag to give you near the same production, a little less. I like him for 130 total yards, at least 1 touchdown. Great return on your investment. Chris Thompson, $5,600. Joe Mixon, $5,600.
All right, guys, that's actually it for this week's Week 4 preview edition of the show. We've got a ton going on right now. This is a big final week for the Le'Veon Bell signed jersey giveaway. I've got it here. This thing's a beauty, guys, and we are drawing the name for it this Sunday, October 1st. Somebody's going to win this authentic signed jersey. Le'Veon Bell comes with a certificate of authenticity. It's the real deal. I have not taken it out of the package to wear it or smell it or do anything weird like that with it. So
How would you smell it?
I don't know, like something about it. I don't know. He signed it. I don't know. I just want to be close to greatness, I guess. I don't know. Listen, the contest ends 10-1. We're going to pick a winner then. All you have to do is go to footballgoons.com. Right on the front page there, you sign up for our email newsletter. Once you sign up for the email newsletter, you're entered. You could enter as many email addresses as you have. If you've got 10 email addresses, enter 10 of them. You'll get 10 entries. If you've got 1, enter 1 and you'll get an entry. We're going to draw this thing this weekend and announce the winner then. You're not going to get any spam, no email selling to anybody else, no junk mail. One email every week highlighting the podcast, link to our power rankings, and whatever else is going on that week. Check us out on social media as well, facebook.com/footballgoons. And on the Twitter, we are at footballgoons. You can keep sending us your lineup questions all week long. We will get to them as we can throughout the week. We love to interact with you, the Goon Squad, and just give you our thoughts and just have a dialogue with you. And we make it a point to always try and get back to you guys. We also ask that you would subscribe to our YouTube channel for those of you that have been watching there. You'll get a notification of whenever we're going to have a show go live, and you'll get all the latest and greatest updates from us there. We will catch you guys next time.